Lepore, let's talk about the Western Conference because we
Ah,
we just talked about the Eastern Conference and how we would essentially take the Lightning at this point over some of the other teams. And when you look at the Eastern Conference right now, everyone's talking about how much of a gauntlet it is, and there's all these great teams. But might that gauntlet actually be in the Western Conference, Lepore, with the way things have been
oh,
going recently? The
yeah.
LA Kings have been unbelievable lately, and that's going to be a very difficult first round matchup for the Edmonton Oilers, who last year faced the Kings without Drew Doughty, without Victor Arvidsson. Kevin Fiala was not on the team. This is a Kings team that has beefed up at the deadline, picking up Korpisalo and Gavrikov on the blue line. That team looks great. Colorado's been surging. They've essentially been the best team in the league over the last 6 weeks. Minnesota's playing well. You have some teams still fighting for a playoff spot. Some Canadian teams fighting for a playoff spot. I mean, the season that Calgary's had has been insanely frustrating, but
Crazy.
Calgary and Winnipeg, I mean, Winnipeg's in the final wildcard spot. They are no slouch. You obviously have Vegas, who's been leading the Pacific Division for most of the season, and then the Dallas Stars, who are quietly having a great season. Is the Western Conference actually better than the East? Is that crazy to say, Lepore? Are we nuts for even thinking about this right now?
Yeah. It's funny because let's go head to head. Okay. As it stands right now, as you mentioned, you have Seattle and Winnipeg in the wild card spots. Okay. Who do you give the edge to, those two teams or the Islanders and Pittsburgh?
I mean, I'd still say the Islanders in Pittsburgh.
Ah, okay.
That's a check.
Okay.
That's a check for the East, at least in my opinion. I don't know how you feel about that.
Yeah, I guess the Jets have been, based on how they started the season, haven't been the greatest. And
Yeah, they've been struggling lately.
Rick Bowness has got some bad body language behind that bench. I don't know. He looks pretty frustrated. And then you go to the top. I'd say, I mean, we all think that the Avalanche are going to clip the Wild for top of that division. I'd say the Avalanche and the Bruins kind of knock each other out. I mean, people would say the Bruins regular season, what they've had, but it's still the Colorado Avalanche. So those teams knock each other out. And let's do it. Let's do the other five: the Oilers, the Kings, the Knights, the Stars, the Wild versus the other teams in the Eastern Conference. I mean, to me, it's at least debatable. It's at least debatable. And we were sitting here a few weeks ago, everyone was shouting about how the East is not fair. But the way the tables have turned, you mentioned LA, man. I feel like in the West, and maybe because it is the West, people don't watch them as much. The games are late. You have these teams that are really good. I mean, how many people when you hear those discussions on who's going to win the Stanley Cup or who you can see making a run, how many times have you heard people say Vegas? No one said Vegas.
No one's really been talking about Vegas. They're quietly just chugging along, first place in the Pacific, on pace for another great season. No one's really talking about them.
Yeah, they've been top 5 in the league the entire season. Let's check it on your app. Oh, it leaves. Oh, Vegas. Vegas was always right there, and no one's talking about them. LA, quietly good, man. Quietly good. And I am stoked. Bruno brought it up before the podcast started about LA playing Edmonton in the first round. I love that series. I'm a Kings guy because of the Wayner, which is funny. He's all wenching for the Oilers. But I guess my childhood was more in the Kings era. But I just think that would be a great series rematch of last year. Two different types of teams. Sadly, though, I caught a little bit of the Kings game yesterday. Yeah, in case Leafs fans are wondering, both Dursey and Moore look very good. Tier, but yeah,
sad.
It's at least the debate, and yeah, I might give if someone said asked me to give an edge to a conference right now, I may say the West. Really, I just see teams maybe even. I'll put it this way, and I touched on earlier how I hate to talk about how teams don't have heart and character, but the whole built for the playoffs thing. I don't know. Carolina, are they built for the playoffs?
Carolina's good, but my one thing with them, Lepore, over the last few years is that they're still lacking that high-end game-breaking talent. As good as Aho and Natchez are, Pacioretty only played a few games for them and then tore his Achilles again. Andrei Svechnikov, one of their best players, is now out for the season. That takes them a peg down for me.
Yeah.
I don't really believe in Carolina winning the cup this year as good as they've been. So, and You know, like who would you rather take, like Carolina or Vegas? Like, who's the better team?
Oh, it's not
at
even
this
close to me. It's not even close to me. I'd rather play Carolina than Vegas. And then even going down, I mean, New Jersey, are they? Well, they're at least in show me mode because we don't know. And then like the Rangers haven't been that great since their trades. So I don't know,
It's
man.
debatable, man.
It's debatable. Like it really is. And like teams, man, like maybe it's that old like West bias that we do think these teams are more built for the playoffs. But I wouldn't want to play Minnesota. I wouldn't want to have to go into XL Energy and have to play be in that environment. The Kings, experienced group. They got some good young players now coming in. And just kind of there's that weird thing, I think, in the West where you have good teams, but teams at the same time don't have like a lot of pressure on them. And people can say, oh, like the players put pressure on themselves. And that's true. But say LA, like if someone said LA is going to be in the conference finals, I mean, we wouldn't be shocked. But at the same time, if they got ousted in the first round of Edmonton, like I don't think anyone's losing their job or like major trades are happening. Whereas in the East, I mean, the Bruins, the expectation is to win the whole thing. The Toronto Maple Leafs are the Toronto Maple Leafs. Tampa Bay's been a 3 straight Stanley Cup Finals, so in their mind, it's win or bust. Then you go to the other side, and the New York Rangers know exactly where they stand after every game. The media and fans either love them or hate them based on a W or an L. So
There's a lot of pressure on them too with the trades that they made.
Exactly, good point, 100%. And then, I mean, the Devils, they've had a great regular season.
Yeah, they're the only team without pressure, Lepore, really, is the Devils, because this is like their first their first experience being a really good team in the playoffs. Like all their young guys are finally coming into their own, but no one's going to lose their job if the Devils lose to the Rangers in the first round.
And then you go to Carolina. I mean, they've had their injuries, but still, I mean, based on their last few regular seasons and how they've been this year, they want to go deep. The expectation is to go deep. So some scary teams in the West, man. Scary teams in the West. Like I said, it's at least the debate, and that's the way it should be, right? Like you don't want to see one conference being much stronger than the other. And we talk about the divisions and the matchups and how it fucks up the league. To be fair, I mean, the way the East stands right now kind of is what it is. It's not like there's no excuses. Like again, back to the Leafs. The Leafs don't have an excuse of like the gauntlet they would have to go through. I mean, yeah, they would get the Bruins in the second round, but it's the playoffs, man.
I still give the edge to the East, and I think it does come back to the conversation that there just seems to be more pressure and a sense of urgency around some of these teams in the East, whereas the West, you have Minnesota, and they were almost supposed to kind of have, I don't want to really say a down season, but not be as good as last season. But they've been really good. And Colorado, despite all their injuries, has been really good. But they just won the cup, so it's like how much pressure is really on Colorado? Then you have the Kings, who we talked about. I mean, you could say maybe the most pressure's on Edmonton because
100%.
they got to the conference final last year. McDavid and Draisaitl are in God mode. I mean, McDavid looks like arguably the most talented hockey player we've ever seen in his prime right now. So you don't want to waste those opportunities. And they're going to be on the road, it looks like, to start their series against the Kings, who have been one of the best teams in the league the last couple of months. So I would say that maybe Edmonton probably has the most pressure on them, but there doesn't seem to be as much pressure on these teams in the West as there is in the East. So I think that's kind of the separating factor at this point. And then obviously you have the Bruins in the East, who have been, the greatest team in NHL history. Yeah. So I still give the edge to the East, but man, the Western Conference and just the first round in general is going to be unbelievable, man, with some of these matchups.
Yeah, I don't know if I should bring it up now because we're kind of late in the show because this is a whole topic. Who's got more pressure, the Toronto Maple Leafs or the Edmonton Oilers?
Oh yeah, that's tough. We'll save that for like a long conversation on one of our next podcasts, just because we're getting up to the time here. But man, I still think the Leafs have more pressure. But if you had to do like a power ranking of like the teams with the most pressure on them heading into the playoffs, the Leafs and the Oilers are both like in the top 4.
Yeah.
For me.
Yeah. 100%. And you could even make a list with them being 1, 2.
Yeah,
really.
You really could. You really could at this point.
Fun stuff. Come playoff time. It's going to be awesome.
Oh, man. Anyway,
it's the
Lepore.
best, man. The playoffs really are, man. The playoffs are the best. You watch a game, You watch another game. You have a TV or a computer with another game. Then you get to the second round and it's the perfect like 2 series a night. You watch both. Awesome, man. Can't wait.
Oh, it's the best, especially the first round. And I know we've all complained about the playoff format, but the first round is going to be insane this year.
Yeah. So it's funny. As much as we complain about it, it's A+ entertainment when you have 2 really good teams playing each other right away.
Exactly. It's going to be so much fun.